If we could all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Moment of silence. Thank you.
Let Mr. Whitson know that the TV screens in the room are not working right now, just so you're aware of that.
Okay, thank you.
Now we'll go into the organizational meeting because this is January. We elect officers and do appointments and that kind of thing. So, Mr. Kerr, if you'll get us started with the organizational meeting.
I can do that.
Please.
As you've done in the past several years, the body makes several nominations and selections for positions, chairperson, vice chair, and appointees to various groups through a nomination process, and then at the conclusion of filling all those roles, inserts those names into the organizational resolution and adopts the resolution with all the information included. I'm happy to start things off or run all the way through it, depending on what the chairperson wants to do after that position is selected. I'll call for nominations. Nominations should be put on the floor by name. Once we close nominations, then I'll call for a vote, and you'll vote by identifying the name of the person that you would like to put forward for that position. The name with the most votes will carry. In the case of one nomination, then that person will just carry by acclamation. All right?
I nominate Ms. Smith, Supervisor Smith.
So the first item on the floor is chairperson, and Mr. Frazier has nominated Ms. Smith.
Madam Chair, I'll nominate you, Debbie Donahue, for chair.
So I have Mr. Frazier nominating Ms. Smith and Mr. Whitson nominating Ms. Donahue. Any other nominations? Hearing none, we'll call the vote. Mr. Carney.
Donahue.
Ms. Donahue.
Donahue.
Mr. Frazier.
Smith.
Ms. Smith.
Myself.
Mr. Whitson.
Donahue.
Ms. Donahue will be the chair. Would you like to carry forward?
I think you do a fine job.
Okay. Next position is vice chair. I'll accept nominations for vice chair.
I'd like to nominate Mr. Whitson.
Any other nominations for vice chair?
I hate to say that.
I don't know if he can hear you, but
I just hate to say that Mr. Whitson may not be up to the task.
I'm up to it, and I'll be back in person next month.
Yeah, I'm sorry I made that statement, sir.
No, that's fine. I totally understand. I appreciate you bringing it up.
any other nominations for vice chair? Hearing none, Mr. Whitson will be your vice chair by acclamation. Next is a representative to the Rappahannock Regional Commission. This has typically been the chair in the past, but is not required to be so, and the county administrator also serves on this body. I'll accept nominations.
Mr. Curry and Kier Woodson, I believe that this traditionally goes to the chair, so I'll nominate Ms. Donahue.
Any other nominations? Hearing none, Ms. Donahue will be your representative by acclamation. Next on the list is the board's representative to the Planning Commission. There was a
Madam
question.
Chair.
There was a question earlier.
Hold on, Mr. Second.
There's a question earlier in the year whether an alternate could be appointed, and we did some research and determined that that was possible, so that's available to the board should you want to. Thank you. I'll accept nominations.
Okay. I'm sorry to jump in. Madam Chair, with gratitude for my colleague Ms. Smith stepping in for the latter part of calendar year 2022 and having done a very good job, I would like to nominate Ms. Smith for the Planning Commission rep position.
Thank you.
Any other nominations for appointee or an alternate appointee?
I'd like to nominate Mr. Whitson as an alternate. If you'd like to do that, Mr. Whitson.
Sure, I'd be happy to.
Any other nominations for representative to the Planning Commission for the appointee or the alternate? Both will be appointed by acclamation. Next is the Board of Zoning Appeals representative to the Planning Commission. I believe the Board of Zoning Appeals recommended, I apologize,
Ms. Pierce.
Sharon Pierce as their recommendation.
Madam Chair, with the amount of work that is still to be done by the Planning Commission, and for the sake of continuity, I would put forth the name of Ms. Steph Ritter for that position again.
Mr. Frazier nominates Ms. Ritter. Any other nominations? Hearing none, Ms. Ritter will be appointed by acclamation. Next is a representative to the Rappahannock River Basin Commission, which also provides an opportunity for appointee and an alternate.
I would like to nominate Mr. Whitson for that.
Mr. Carney has nominated Mr. Whitson.
Yourself for
I'd like
alternate.
to nominate Mr. Frazier as the alternate.
You up to?
Another one they meet.
Once a month all over the place, or once every 2 months, I think, all over the place.
It's
4 times a year.
it's not frequent.
Once every 3
As
months.
the alternate, I'll do my best.
And there was Whitson. Frazier. Any other nominations? Hearing none, both will be appointed by acclamation. Next is the representatives on the Public Safety Committee. There are 2 representatives.
I'd like to nominate Ms. Donahue and Mr. Whitson.
Any other nominations?
It's been difficult for me to make those meetings lately.
Understood. Not hearing any other nominations. 2 positions will be Ms. Donahue and Mr. Whitson. Acclamation. Next is the Fire Levy Board, 1 position. Accept nominations for Fire Levy Board representative.
I'd like to nominate Mr. Carney.
Any other nominations? Hearing none, Mr. Carney by acclamation. Next will be board member representative to the Rappahannock Shenandoah Warren Regional Jail Authority Board, to which the county administrator also serves. The bylaws allow an alternate to be selected as well if so deemed appropriate by the board. Accept nominations for the RSWRJ Authority Board.
I will nominate Mr. Whitson for that, if he's up for it.
Sure, it's a great interest to me, for sure.
Every other month?
So,
Any alternates interested? Which would only, in the event that the appointee is not available.
It's an opposite direction haul for me.
And it's a
very
daytime
challenging.
meeting.
My recommendation would be if she'd be willing to be the alternate, Ms. Donahue.
I think for an alternate, I can do it.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I mean, it's just, takes
I'll
me a
take that as
completely
Ms.
different
Smith's
way.
nomination of Ms. Donahue. Any other nominations? Hearing none. It'll be Mr. Whitson and Ms. Donahue. Next is appointee to the Agricultural and Forestal Districts Advisory Committee. We've discussed earlier in the year, this body will likely not meet this year. So I still would like an
I
appointee.
can do that.
Yeah.
Mr. Fraser, can I nominate you?
I nominate Mr.
For
Fraser.
continuity, I think Mr. Fraser has been willing to.
Sounds like everybody nominates Mr. Fraser. Any other interested members to be nominated? Mr. Fraser, thank you. Put you down for Ag
I
and
want
Forestry.
my pay double this year.
Next is representative to the Rappahannock County Recreational Facilities Authority, RCRFA. This too could have an appointee and an alternate. If so, it's deemed appropriate by the board. I'll accept nominations for the Recreational Facilities Authority Board.
Continuing the theme of continuity, I will nominate Mr. Carney, and with gratitude for the work he's done there.
Any other nominations?
I'd like to nominate Ms. Donahue as an alternate, if you'd be so willing.
Alternates I'll take.
Any other nominations? I heard your major was in Parks and Recreation.
It is. One of these days I'll use it.
Gotta put it to use.
No other nominations, we'll close those, and Mr. Carney, Ms. Donahue is alternate by acclamation. Next is the Rappahannock County CPMT, representative to that body, board.
I'd like to nominate Ms. Donahue.
I think after Ms. Smith's message, it makes sense if you're,
The timing on, it's moved to the third Tuesday midday, and honestly, I think with the closed session work that goes on in that meeting, I think it behooves us to alternate our appointee on a yearly basis.
okay.
Any other nominations for CPMT?
Well, I was about to nominate Ms. Smith because I missed that message.
I'll assume that's not a nomination.
So I will withdraw the nomination I never made.
Got it.
Thanks for your vote of confidence anyway.
I wanted you to know that you were in my thoughts on that, so.
All right, Ms. Donahue, you'll be appointed to CPMT. Next is the Rules Committee, which has 2 members. And you've also appointed an alternate in the past.
I'd like to nominate, if you would like to stay
Yeah.
on there, Mr. Fraser, Ms. Smith. And I think I was the alternate last year. I can't nominate myself, but I'd be happy.
I'll alternate you for the.
You can definitely,
I'll alternate you for the nominee, Van.
these are our rules, you can nominate yourself.
Okay. Okay.
Any other nominations? I have Ms. Smith and Mr. Fraser as the Rules Committee with Mr. Carney as an alternate by acclamation. Next, we have the Building Committee, 2 appointees.
I'll nominate Mr. Fraser and Ms. Smith. Continuity, it's the name of the game.
There's a lot of work going on, I'm happy to do it.
With a raise.
Yes.
Double, triple it.
Any other nominations?
That joke never gets old, Mr. Brewer.
Any other nominations for Building Committee? All right, by acclamation, it would be Ms. Smith and Mr. Fraser. That gets us through the appointments. The last paragraph of the resolution speaks to the regular meeting schedule for the Board of Supervisors, which will remain the same, first Monday of the month unless it's a holiday, in which case it'll be Wednesday. And that in the case of weather issues, the chair, or if the chair's not available, the vice chair can reschedule that meeting. And with all of that information available and placed within this document, I would accept a motion in a second to adopt the resolution as amended through all those motions.
I put forward a motion that the resolution as presented and with all of the names inscribed during this process be adopted.
Second. The one appointee or appointment that I didn't notice is not on the list is that Used to be Celebrate Shenandoah.
Yes, I believe that body is probably waning.
Okay.
And
it's something new
when
involves.
those positions, when the board made those appointments in the past, they were not term limited.
Okay,
And so those appointees, I believe you're a member, are
Great.
still on the books.
good.
I think it'll probably all shift into Blue Ridge Committee.
Sounds good.
There is one appointment, though, that not mentioned on there that I've held for a number of years, the Virginia Career Works.
That, again, was an appointment that was not term limited, and so
Right.
you're appointed for life unless the board decides otherwise, or you
I think it
quit.
was brought out by the county attorney at that time that, excuse me, I may not be talking loud enough for Mr. Whitson. The process that one goes through to enable us as a council to vote on, matters is a little bit more difficult than what we do on these other bodies. So I just
Sure.
brought that to light. We may forget about it.
It's on my list. If there's no further discussion, Madam Chair, you can call the roll and you can vote on this.
All right, roll call vote. Mr. Frazier?
Aye.
Ms. Smith?
Aye.
Mr. Carney?
Aye.
Mr. Whitson?
Aye.
And I also.
Excellent.
All right.
You have organized.
Thank you. Always do a great job. All right, so next we go into the adoption of the agenda.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to adopt the agenda as presented.
I have a motion, do I have a second?
A second.
Ms. Smith,
No
second.
addendum items?
No, sir.
We have a motion and a second, any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Now, presentations, it's a light one, but I bet it's an excellent one. Dr. Grimsley.
Hello, good afternoon. Happy New Year from Panther Nation. We are back in school and ready for what promises to be a very eventful and productive 2023. Our CPS ended 2022 strongly, wrapping up first semester SOLs, final projects, and exams. Some students even completed first semester certifications, including students enrolled in the Agriculture Academy and Health Science Academy who received a plethora of career credentials. These included items like the American Allied Health Veterinary Assistant Certification, Pet Emergency CPR and First Aid, the National Equine Management and Evaluation Certification. The Health Sciences Academy collaborated with Company One to conduct a real-world life-saving scenario with students who participated in recognizing the issue, assisting with administering CPR, retrieving an AED, and calling 911. Company One then reported to the scene, and students were able to watch the first responders in action and assist. This simulation and program is helping engage younger high school students who may one day wish to volunteer within the company first responder agencies. Our CPS was full of holiday spirit at the close of the semester. The annual Pride Variety Show returned, a student talent show that emphasizes supporting each other's many different talents. Students and staff participated in fun game show style games and were awed by the talents of so many students, and I was in attendance and it was just mind-blowing how talented our kids are. Speaking of talented students, I hope you were able to attend the Holiday Extravaganza concert that included 6th, 7th grade band, the high school jazz and concert band, the first ever RCHS percussion ensemble, and a cappella group. The evening was very well attended and the students were absolutely amazing. A huge shout out to our new Rising Star band director, Miss Kalia Page, for inspiring students to accomplish so much so quickly. Our Fine Arts Academy is now back on track. More teacher accolades are in order. Huge congratulations to Sarah Moore for receiving the Culpeper Soil and Water Conservation Educator of the Year award. Sarah is our resident environmental scientist, farm-to-table teacher, and high school science teacher. Next, Mr. Jeff Day for his class qualifying for the We the People state competition. We the People is a new program to RCHS. The program promotes civic competence and responsibility among high school students through incorporating a rigorous, interactive curriculum and course of instruction on the history and the principles of the United States Constitutional Democratic Republic. Students then take what they've learned to compete in simulated hearings where they testify before a panel of judges acting as members of Congress. Students demonstrate their knowledge and understanding of constitutional principles and have the opportunity to then evaluate and defend positions on relevant historical and contemporary issues. Best of luck to our students in Mr. Day's class at the state competition. The Headwaters Foundation After School Enrichment Program ended a very successful first session with an ice cream social and a showcase. Session 2 will begin on January 17th and will run Tuesdays through Thursdays every week all the way through May 18th. The session's offerings this session will include fundamentals of sports, drama, weird and wacky science, totality martial arts, and arts and crafts. If interested in the after-school program, parents should contact Lacey Jenkins. And next Tuesday's school board meeting, we will be kicking off budget planning by going through the components of Governor Youngkin's FY24 proposed budget. This budget season will be challenging with ending of COVID relief dollars, high claims in the region and locally for the local choice health insurance plans, declining enrollment, and continuing to compete across the region with teacher pay and benefits. We are thankful for your continued collaboration in budget planning and advocacy efforts as we've experienced these last few years, especially in helping provide early childhood services, mental health support, keeping the schools open, procuring the generator for emergency community support, broadband expansion, supporting teachers and staff, and so much more. I'll be heading to Richmond this weekend at the VASBO conference, where we'll have the opportunity to speak with General Assembly members about upcoming budget issues. Delegate Webert has introduced House Bill 1443, which will greatly increase revenue to Rappahannock should it successfully pass through the House and Senate Finance Appropriation Committees. We all will do what we can to advocate for this bill to pass, and we'll keep you updated on its progression. We have so many great things going on in this small and mighty school division. Our students are thriving. Just asked my girl Maeve Cuba, who was informed right before the holiday that she was awarded a full ride scholarship to Dartmouth. So excited. Thank you for your continued support. Do you have any questions for me?
I appreciate it.
Dr.
Oh, go ahead.
Dr. Grimsley, sorry. Here, listen, I'm glad you mentioned Maeve Cuba. I've known Maeve over the years when she was a Wakefield student and then went to Rappahannock County High School. And I just want to congratulate the team that helped her pursue that scholarship. I reviewed the website of the organization through which the scholarship was awarded, and I just can't thank you and your team enough for standing behind a very special student like Maeve. So thank you for all the hard work.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And the team referring to is our POG team, Profile of a Graduate Team. We have some excellent folks in there, including our Virginia College advisor from the Virginia College Advising Corps, who's completely grant funded full-time in our school and helps students like Maeve find these opportunities, and not only helps, but helps put it together, communicate, coordinate, and all of those things. So we are very thankful for that position.
She's an impressive young lady, and we're
Yes,
so
she
proud
is.
to have her at the tavern as long as we can. That's the problem when kids grow up and go away.
Quite proud.
Thank you, and thank you for posting the music for those of us that didn't get to go there in person. That was a pretty special night at
Oh, it was
was great.
amazing. Amazing. Yeah. Exciting. Thank you so much.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Thanks, Shannon.
All right. Let's see, we're now into the consent agenda.
Public
Oh, no, public comment, sorry. Hello, everybody in here. If you'd like to speak, please be recognized. If you want to give us your name and your district. And, because we're not on Zoom, it's not as big of a deal, but we still want to know you.
And yes, you must be at the microphone so Mr. Whitson can hear you.
Yes. Can we get the Zoom back up?
No.
No.
Oh, Zoom's up, but we're still not.
Those-
Happy New Year, everyone. Anita Ramos, Hampton District. Good to hear your voice again, Kier. Looking forward to seeing you next month.
Yep, looking forward to it.
First of all, I want to thank Ms. Smith for the work she put into the Planning Commission just jumping in, and she did a terrific job and was very helpful to that group. And I'm sure she's going to do some outstanding work this next year with them also. Number two, we're losing Peggy as clerk of the court, and I just want to say the job of clerk of the court is so strange and so unique in Virginia. When the clerk is the clerk, those records belong to the clerk, not to us. And that person takes care of those records and defends them. And in the case of back in the Civil War, many of those records had to be moved to be hopefully protected, and in some cases were not because of the fire in Richmond. But those people that hold that position work so very hard to make sure those records are protected. And I appreciate all the time she has been there and has taken care of our records. As somebody who's deals in history and genealogy, it's particularly important to know about all the records that are there and that they're well taken care of. So a thank you to Peggy from me. Third, the real estate tax relief for seniors is going to be presented tonight. That is a subject that's close to my heart, and Ms. Smith also. We both have kind of kept hoping and mentioning and trying to get it going, and I'm so glad that we're at this point now. I think it's very important for the people who want to stay in this county, who have put their lives through all their lives in this county, that they have a chance to stay. And last, as I always do in December, in January, I want to honor those people who have represented our country in some way, shape, or form. And I'm sorry we don't have Zoom today, because there's probably a few people who would have been on Zoom.
We do have Zoom, we just don't have it on
We just
screens.
don't, yeah, well, then they can't put up their hands. But anyway, those of you who have worked for our country, either in the service, in the civilian organizations, or contracting in any way, would you all stand up? I know there's got to be a couple of you. Mm-hmm. I want to thank you all for taking such good care of our nation, because we don't always realize that all these little things that go on in our federal government that help take care of all of us. So every year, I'm a child of the Pentagon. My father was in the Pentagon from World War II through Vietnam. My husband was there also, though he couldn't tell you what he did. So anyway, and I had so many friends in the U.S. government that I want to thank them all, because I know how many of them put in so much of their time to take care of us all. So thank you.
Thank you, Anita.
Thanks, Anita.
Happy New Year. Anyone else wishing to speak? Not seeing anyone. There's no real way to...
Yeah, if people are on Zoom, I can see, raise your hand.
Oh,
and I
okay.
can-
Anyone on Zoom that would like to speak, please raise your hand, and Mr. Curry will recognize you.
Seeing none.
None? Seeing none on Zoom, we'll close the public comment period and move into the consent agenda.
Madam Chair, I'd like to pull from the consent agenda the accounts payable, please.
Okay. Anyone else? Do I have a motion?
So moved. Oh, second.
Motion to approve everything with the exception of the accounts payable, please.
Thank you.
Second.
All right. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. Accounts payable. Mr. Whitson?
Yeah, this is a question for Mr. Curry. I think everyone's already taking for granted the much improved refuse and recycling setup we now have at Flatwood and Amosville. In my mind's eye, and it's probably excusable if my mind isn't super sharp right now, but my recollection is that we were sort of on a trajectory of about $250,000 a year paid out to Page County. And I noted, let me see if I can, looks like December 14th check run, we paid Page County $25,000, which if extrapolated over the course of the calendar year would be more like $300,000. I'm just wondering if you could just give us a high level overview of how that relationship is going and if our costs incurred remain in line with what we expected at the outset. And I do recall there was some negotiation back and forth over fuel surcharges And I'd be curious to know if we're getting an extra hit given the cost of fuel.
Yeah, sure. I think December was a double hit. Yes, fuel is built in to the agreement based on the mileage it takes to get to our sites and the fuel mileage for the vehicles. It's all boiled into a 3-month look back. So every quarter, they're able to reset the fuel surcharge, and it adds an additional cost to our haul costs, how many times those trucks are driving. In addition, there was a heavy trash month for us in December. So we are fluctuating between 21, 22,000 and 25,000. Right now, we're still on track for our budget for those lines when you add them all together. But it's something we definitely have to look at. Also, had an escalation on the tipping fee rate as well, so that pops up a quarter each year. I think we're at $34.25 a ton right now, which is compared to 50 for Culpeper.
In terms of our relationship with Page County, is there any need for us to sit down with them in near term to just review our current agreement? Where do we stand on that kind of periodic review?
I think it continues to be mutually beneficial, and if I recall, there are maybe every 5 years we have an opportunity to go in and look at things together if it's not working for us. I think it's continues to be very viable for us, and I think it's beneficial for Page County as well, which is great when they can meet that.
Great. All right. Thanks very much. I'll go ahead and put forward a motion that we adopt the accounts payable and pay the bills.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Thank you. All right, we're on to appointments. Rappahannock County Broadband Authority.
Oh, are we going to do the presentation?
We
now?
need to do the presentation first.
Oh, because it's part of the consent agenda. That's the exciting part. Thank you. All right. It's always nice to be able to present recognition to our employees or of anyone in the county that has worked as long as Mr. Jenkins. So this resolution of appreciation and commendation from the Rappahannock County Board of Supervisors to Troy C. Jenkins Sr. for his service to the Rappahannock County Water and Sewer Authority. Whereas Troy C. Jenkins Sr. retired from public service to the citizens of Rappahannock County on December 31st, 2022. And whereas 30 years ago, in 1992, Mr. Jenkins first served the citizens of Rappahannock County as an employee of the Rappahannock County Water and Sewer Authority. And whereas during his employment with the RCWSA, he was dedicated to his responsibilities and provided outstanding service to the citizens of Sperryville. And whereas Mr. Jenkins served the RCWSA and its customers with quiet integrity and with the best interests of the citizens always at heart. And whereas the members of the Rappahannock County Board of Supervisors will always consider Mr. Jenkins a colleague and friend. Now therefore be it resolved that the members of the Rappahannock County Board of Supervisors hereby express their appreciation of and commendation to Troy C. Jenkins Sr. for his long and distinguished service and wish him good health and best wishes during retirement. And be it further resolved that this resolution be spread across the minutes of the Rappahannock County Board of Supervisors for all citizens to reflect upon the service and accomplishments of this dedicated public servant. Adopted this 4th day of January, 2023. A round of applause. As does the rest of the board, I'm sure. Would you like to get in a picture real quick? You came up together. 30 years is a long time. Yes.
Tell us about it.
Now you can tell us everything.
all so much. Thank you, Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Troy.
Thank you.
Troy, you're gonna be missed. Thanks for everything you've done.
He heard you, Mr. Whitson, waved at the speaker.
Thank you. Sorry I couldn't be there today, Troy.
Thank you.
All right, thank you for that. We are, let's see, I'm lost on this.
We are now at appointments.
Appointments, where I was before.
Yep.
Broadband Authority,
Yeah, the Broadband Authority was formally created on January 23rd, 2021. The Articles of Incorporation included staggered terms. There were 2 terms that were set for 2 years that will expire this January 23rd. That Mr. Carney and Ms. Smith. And so the board will need to appoint members to fill those spots. I think generally the Articles of Incorporation envision that these members be Board of Supervisors members, but does not require that. Up to 2 members of the Broadband Authority may be citizens of the county and not board members. So to that end, there are 2 appointments available.
And these don't need to be advertised, Phil?
No. I think if a board member declined, then an advertisement process would be appropriate.
Madam Chair, I'll nominate. So basically, Mr. Courier explained that Mr. Carney and Ms. Smith are cycling off because of state return, correct?
Correct. So they would be appointed for a new 4-year term if they're willing to serve and appointed by the board.
Okay, I will nominate Ms. Smith and Mr. Carney for 4-year terms to the Rappahannock County Broadband Authority.
Is that a motion to appoint?
If that's what you need, so we're not on this, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will put forward a motion to appoint Ms. Smith and Mr. Carney to 4-year terms on the Rappahannock County Broadband Authority
And
board.
to Ms. Smith's point, to make sure we don't have any issues, why don't we just tack onto that end of that waive any informalities?
I would second that.
I just want to say that I thank you for the nomination, but I will not be intending to continue to serve on the Broadband Authority. I think the way it was structured, we did intend for people to cycle off, and I feel that it would be healthy for that to become more an appointee and less a political position. And so if you're willing to bifurcate your motion, I'll certainly support Mr. Carney if he's still continuing and willing to serve.
Okay, I'll withdraw my motion. Thank you for the explanation. I'll withdraw my motion. I'll put forward a new motion. Nominating appointing Mr. Carney to the board of the Rappahannock County Broadband Authority for a 4-year term.
And waiving any informalities in the appointment?
Yeah, we'll get any informalities. I'm not sure I know what all that means, but.
You have a policy that you set for appointments, and the last section of that policy says you can waive anything that you want to.
Okay.
And I'll second that. We have a motion, a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 And Mr. Curry, do you need a motion, or is it just by consensus that we ask you to advertise?
Yeah, I'd gladly accept a motion for anything, but I think I gathered from consensus that Ms. Smith is not interested by her statement, and that the most appropriate path forward would be to advertise in the newspaper.
Well, I mean, there's a couple of different ways to handle this. On certain committees and authorities, it's by the decision of the supervisor for the district that steps aside. I think that would be an appropriate way to handle this. We should have equal representation of all the districts still, even if it's not the supervisor themselves. And I personally think Ms. Bond is here today, and if she's willing to serve, she's a voice of historical information on the Broadband Authority, having served on the Broadband Committee for many years. And if she's willing to serve, I would certainly like to put her name forward as the new representative.
Yeah, I think the articles, yeah, the articles require appointment by the board, but
Yeah, if Ms. Bond is willing to serve, I would be delighted to have her
Okay.
on the Broadband Authority.
Mr. Whitson seconded that.
With a raise.
If it's a motion.
She's looking for a raise.
Well, she's at all the meetings anyway.
I see you're nodding her head in the affirmative.
All right, we have a motion, a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Let's just, if you could, I'm sorry, get ahead of,
Yes,
if you
sir.
could tack on to the end of your motion. that
Oh,
we're
waiving
also-
all formalities, yes, I
In-
should know that.
informalities, yes,
Informalities,
yes.
I should know that by now. I amend my motion.
Thank you. And Mr. Whitson, do you accept that
Yes.
friendly amendment? Thank you.
second that modified motion.
Excellent. And now you're voting on it?
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I
Excellent.
wouldn't think.
Thank you.
And many thanks to Margaret Bond for her service as not only on the Broadband Committee, but on the Broadband Authority and fulfilling the role as secretary.
Speaking
They're
of
an
secretary,
invaluable asset.
Yeah, that body's going to have to consider that when that body meets.
that's one way of getting out of secretary. All right.
Thank you, Margaret.
Thank you, Margaret. And thank you, Ms. Smith.
Thank you.
All right, strategic plan for Rappahannock County Fire and Rescue.
Yes, this matter has been discussed by the board in the past, and there's, you can recall, Chief Summers come before you asking to excite the conversation about what comes next in the future path for fire and EMS. He felt it important to identify that. Myself and Mr. Polster have been trying to find a process through which we could try to develop effective communication and dialogue between the county, the Volunteer Fire and Rescue Association, and the various companies so that we could effectively move into strategic planning, longer term. The association did develop a 5-year strategic plan in 2020, and that really, I think, was the catalyst that led to the current initiative with the chase vehicle, and that's in place. But there's more work that needs to be done to consider how our combined system moves into the future. Mr. Polster and I met with a representative from the International Fire Chiefs Association, their combination section, and he recommended this company called The Clearing, who brings different groups together and seeks to develop structured process for buy-in from all parties. They would talk to all parties ahead of time and then bring everybody together to try to work on our cooperative path forward. He's received a proposal which is attached to this document, which would bring forward a 120-day plan, is what we're calling it, to enable work on a 5-year or longer plan. In parallel, Mr. Polster has been in communication with the Path Foundation, who's indicated that they would look favorably upon a grant application to help support the cost of this planning effort.
And part of the cost.
Part of the cost, yeah. The planning effort is quoted at $60,000. The grant is available up to $25,000, thereby leaving a gap of $35,000. The action that staff is asking you to consider, in which the Public Safety Committee recommended to the board, is to move forward with this process with the hope of using this paid firm to get us on the same page and get us a structured process to move forward, and then using some of our regional opportunities to work on the longer-term plan after the fact, which we think might be able to be done with limited cost. So the action is to authorize the application for the PATH grant, as well as entertain an agreement with the clearing to do this work contingent based on receiving that grant.
I have a couple questions. When did the board actually approve this level of executive outreach, if you will?
You mean seeking proposals?
Not only that, but this 120-day strategic,
This is a proposal for the board's consideration. If the board wants to go in a different direction, we'll try to figure out another potentially,
Well, I mean, but who picked 120 days?
through the dialogue with the clearing is what they suggested when we said, hey, we'd like you to help us with a 5-year plan. They told us, you're not ready for a 5-year plan.
That may be very true, but again, I'm trying to figure out where was I when we decided on 120 days?
Well, that decision's not been made. So
I'm
that's-
sorry?
That decision has not been made, that's why
No, that
it's before
decision's
you.
been made because that's what they're proposing, and that's what they're writing up in their proposal. Somebody made that decision somewhere already.
Well, the clearing, I guess if you could say, made the decision to propose that as what they think is appropriate for our organization,
But you're saying that this board has never talked to anybody about this
this board,
prior to today?
not as a body, no. The Public Safety Committee has heard some about this.
We got it on the agenda, but when did we first receive it? I mean, when did we first approve it?
It's not been approved, I guess. we're
120
missing each
days.
other.
Talked about it on
When
the
did the board
14th.
approve?
It was discussed at the Public Safety Committee meeting, but there's been no approval for
But
120 days.
they don't have any ability to approve anything like this,
Who's they?
the Public Safety Committee.
No, they're recommending that the board approve this based on their review. Certainly, the board is not compelled to follow their recommendation. And
Right, but
if the board doesn't
The
think.
board did not approve this. I want to get that out there, that I did not miss something.
Correct. That's what we're here today to do. If you're so willing, if there's a different direction of the board, then staff can run that down.
Have you actually read the, it's hard to pull this thing up because we don't have any signal.
All right. Is the clearing, have they joined us today?
Not that I'm aware of.
Oh, there it is. It did pop up. I think it's,
Did they join the Public Safety Committee meeting?
yeah, it's page 5, under Phase 3, Design of Facilitated Alignment Session, Communications. We co-create a compelling, clear narrative or story with our clients to help eliminate resistance from inside and outside the system. When nobody knows that this is coming except for 2 or 3 key employees of the board, then I feel kind of left out of it already, which is what they say that they're trying to do with this personal treatment on the next page. Each stakeholder feels treated honorably, meaning they've had ample opportunity to be heard, to make their opinions known, and to consider the opinions of others. Somehow we come up with an idea of this 120-day time period in which we're going to generate this thing, and I have no knowledge of it as a board member.
All I can say is this is a proposal, and if you want to move the proposal forward, then the scope of services as identified would start, and that stakeholder engagement would take place. If the board wants to think about this for a month or provide direction that you want staff to seek out alternate proposals, we'd be happy to do that.
Well, I
and
just
vet them
wonder
through the Public
if you've
Safety
had some
Committee.
direction from somewhere to get to this point.
No, I think when we've talked about similar topics in the past, I'm doing my best to bring opportunities to the board so that you can make the decisions that you think are appropriate to move the system forward. If this proposal is not to the board's liking, then staff would be happy to find a different proposal.
As an elected member of this body, I would like to have some discussion before you go off and do things like this.
I appreciate that.
But it keeps happening. At this board, it keeps happening.
I appreciate your perspective, although I can say that I cannot clue the board in on everything I do. That's why you have a full-time employee, and board members don't need to be engaged full-time.
Now, maybe other board members want that, but I am used to having a little bit more communication, and I do not like to just be blindsided by something that I'm supposed to. How is this any different than Congress, where they're given a big page of something, like a number of pages of a bill to look at, and a few days in which to read it? This is presented today, and it's an action item.
What's a handful of pages, and you can act on it whenever the board thinks it's appropriate.
I don't know that it's appropriate because I don't still understand how we got to this point where it's an action item today.
It doesn't have to be. We got to this point
It is.
because the Public Safety Committee put forward a recommendation.
They don't have any authority.
Could I ask, do you mind if I ask one question? Are there other folks and organizations that you spoke to that were like the clearing?
No.
So just one?
We took this recommendation from the IAFC chief as being effective, but any,
They don't have any authority over this board.
And I would just,
Ms. Dye, you're the other member of the Public Safety Committee. Is there, do you have anything you want to add to this discussion based on your service on that committee?
I would believe, thank you, that Mr. Fraser and I can agree that there's a communication issue throughout the county with the different companies. And if you can walk first and find a way to communicate in a way everybody's hearing and feeling a part of the communication, then you can move on to a strategic plan discussion. But one before the other isn't going to work. And I think that's what we heard in the Public Safety Committee meeting, was this is a recommendation just to be able to bring everybody together in a communication way, which will last and help us forever as long as the volunteers and the paid are working together.
I have to agree with that, but there's always a but or a however. I think I'm being left out of the process, so I have no reason to disbelieve the volunteers when they say that they feel left out of a process.
I would just say, I think what's missing here, and this is contrasting it to the last time the plan was put together. I guess the first time it originated, it wasn't revised, it was originated. It was a bottom-up process. It was the volunteers that were involved in the process and that went around and conducted extensive interviews and put in a lot of time and effort to put something together. I guess my challenge with today's proposal is that this is top-down leadership, and I don't think that's going to work very well, especially if the whole point of top-down leadership of this proposal is to get folks to the table. I don't per se have an issue with a mediator coming in or someone coming in to help us find our way, but I don't think we should approve this or any other plan until we have heard from our volunteers and our chiefs in the association about what they think is the most constructive way forward, and any feedback that they may have about this particular plan.
I thought I just reviewing the agenda, I thought the question posed to us today was whether or not we wish to direct staff to submit a grant application to the PATH Foundation. With this as background, with this proposal as background for what we'd be seeking the grant money for, it seems to me that time is of the essence, and if the action is to go ahead and file a grant application, it seems like we do that simultaneous with our each taking additional time to review this and talk to the various fire and rescue companies that are based in each of our districts. And maybe we can bring some efficiency to bear on completing what I think is a pretty important assessment of the system overall.
Well, I sort of agree with what you're saying, but it's been my experience that once the money's there, it's usually a done deal. And honestly, I'd rather spend a little more money and do it right than spend less money and do it wrong. But I have a hard time thinking this is the right way forward without having more input from our volunteers.
The Public Safety Committee voted unanimously. The association president is a part of that. We did have attendance from some fire and rescue in those meetings because of the conversation. I don't know if you recall, I don't recall anybody speaking to have concern with this phase of it.
But did the association take this up at their prior meeting? Did the head of the association have direction or encouragement from the association meeting in regards to this specific way forward, or was that just, because they're not a dispositive body, sometimes you will move things forward, but you don't have specific direction from the organization that you represent, and that's a very different thing, especially if you're one of 7. Like I said, if this is what we're going to do, then it's going to be what we're going to do, but I think it's foolhardy to move it forward without having some feedback from our volunteers.
We've sought input from the volunteer community and haven't received much back. But if the board would like the association to lead the process, I suggest the board communicate that to the association, that you want their plan to develop a strategic plan going forward, and maybe specifically their input on this proposal, and allow them to take it up in a meeting and give you formal feedback, and then you can consider that in your determination,
Could that be done in a joint meeting?
if both bodies are willing.
I don't know, I feel like, the Public Safety Committee voted unanimously, and as Ms. Donahue said, they're a representative from the association on the Public Safety Committee. Ms. Smith, I appreciate what you're saying, but the Public Safety Committee stepped up and made a unanimous determination that we should go ahead and pursue this grant by filing a grant application. So I'll go ahead and make the motion that county staff go ahead and prepare a grant application to the Pat Foundation, seeking $25,000 support to the services of the clearing, to help improve fire and rescue stakeholder group dynamics and develop a 120-day plan to fund the balance of the clearing fee with the use of fire service fund contingency.
I'll second.
I'm sorry if I could interrupt just a second. I thought we were gonna take a look at doing this sometime later, maybe discuss it and read it, but no, we're doing the same thing that I said that Congress does. It comes before us. We've had really little time to discuss it, especially with our communities, and now we're gonna adopt it.
We have a motion and a second so that we are in discussion.
So this is exactly, the problem is, we see things on the agenda, we don't know where they come from, how they got this far, and then we're gonna approve them.
And it's a holiday. A lot of people are out of town or unavailable.
I just keep coming back to the fact that the Public Safety Committee met and voted unanimously, asking us to consider submitting a grant application, and given the composition of the Public Safety Committee, I think that's a pretty strong indication of the direction that members of the Fire and Rescue Committee wish for us to go. And so I'm taking their advice and have made that motion.
Well, I think the Public Safety Committee, like I've said, it's not a dispositive body, it's an advisory committee. And it's up to us to make the decisions. We're the decision-making body. They simply make a
The
recommendation.
decision's already been made somewhere.
But I'll say, the clearing, if you look at them, what they typically do is work with organizations with employees. And this is a volunteer organization, so it's quite a different animal. And I am sorry that they're not here to talk to us about what they can do this afternoon, but it doesn't sound like they're online and available. And before we, submit a grant application and work with them, which I assume can't be transferred to other organizations, we should really make sure this is who we want to partner with before we should submit a grant application. And more importantly, we should make sure it's who our volunteers want to work with.
As far as communication, I've had 2 different members since last Wednesday tell me on the phone from 2 different companies that they send emails to the county and they get no response. And I tried to work on that a little bit, because I remember when I didn't get an email, an outside agency followed up with a phone call and asked me about the email they sent. And I've never got that email. And then I told Mr. Curry about this. I sent an email from the county email to my personal email, and I haven't received it in 3 years. So I know things happen. But I've got 2 different members from different companies that told me that they send emails to the county staff and they get no response. So,
Happy to look into that. It's the first time hearing of that.
no, actually, we've been talking about this before.
You told me about you sending yourself an email, but
No,
I'm not
but
aware of.
we've talked about staff not being responsive.
I think we're getting a little bit off the
No,
vote.
no, this is important because we're talking about going forward with something. Mr. Curry made a statement that there's been no response from the Fire and Rescue Association, and yet I've got members from 2 different companies that say they don't get any response back from emails.
Mr. Polster can provide some information based about the association, his conversations with the president.
So Sean Polster, Emergency Services Coordinator. So this was brought up, I believe, in October or November last year. We were asked, as part of the letter from Sperryville, to really excite the discussion about what the future looks like for staffing. So we went back, and our intent was to allow the association to lead on this and really push the strategic plan forward from the bottom up, like was suggested. Their recommendation back to the county was to review the 2015 jail-in study. So we provided the association with a checklist of items that the association and Chiefs Group both agreed to implement. After the jail-in study, we found through discussion that none of that was implemented. It was agreed to, but there was no action items that were done. So working with the president of the association, we worked to find the clearing with the International Association of Fire Chiefs. The reason why we decided to go with the clearing after everything else, Mr. Nick and I worked back and forth with them, was that they really pushed the respect piece. That when we go into these discussions, you have to be open to listen and to respect what others are saying in order to drive the best solution moving forward. So working with President Nick, we provided him the proposal, took it back to the association. I understand the association was kind of ambivalent on which way to go. They still wanted to look at the 2015 recommendations and see what kind of the low-hanging fruit was there. That was brought up at the Public Safety Committee meeting. There were no action items that were determined to push forward from that. And so we decided to run parallel tracks with both the recommendations from the jail-in study as well as this strategic plan. To answer your question, sir, we did ask, because our association agreement, or the county agreement with the association says, we will work in conjunction to develop a 5-year plan. From talking to the clearing, they said that you're definitely not ready for a 5-year plan. You don't know where your foot's going to be planted tomorrow. So you really need to look at short term. So they're the ones that recommended that. But as we said before, we need just a scope or change however we need to for operational tempo. This was a proposal. We're more than happy to work with them to whatever the board decides. But this was what we brought forward with the association back to Public Safety Committee to move forward. If you have any additional questions kind of on the ideology of how this happened, more than happy to answer those as well.
You used the word "we" several times.
Yes, sir.
Who is "we"?
President Nick and myself, that's who the association agreement sets that I deal with from the association.
You did all this basically on your own.
No, sir. We did it with President Nick in conjunction with him, as well as the 2015 jail-in
But
study.
this wasn't shared with members of the Public Safety Committee in this form.
We just got the updated, I think yesterday is when we got the updated version.
So has there been a vote of the association endorsing this particular plan?
That I don't know. The association said that they were okay doing a dual track is my. So one of the things that we tried to do throughout this is I spoke with Don Jackson, you mentioned earlier. We spoke with a bunch of people, and we all ended up back at the Volunteer Accommodations Officer section. And one of the things that we thought was best if it was an independent party that came in rather than somebody that was familiar with the system, knew the system, to really kind of kickstart the process. So in talking with President Nick, I advised him kind of how this came to fruition. I put it out in several emails to the chiefs as well, so they knew kind of where this came from. So I don't think there's a preferred method. I think one of the things that we all agree to is it needs to be an outside party to come in and help all of us move our system forward. If that answers your question.
Yes, it does. Do you have a feeling that, for instance, we have the clearing here. Imagine we had X, Y, and Z come through with proposals.
Yes, sir.
Would there be an appetite amongst the chiefs and the association that people would want to go over it and say, vote on one?
I do not know the answer to that. The reason why the International Association of Fire Chiefs brought this forward is because they have experience with COG, which is the Council of Governments. And they worked before when Arlington, Alexandria, Fairfax, Montgomery, Prince William, D.C., they couldn't agree. They were at an impasse on fire and rescue services as a region. And so this group came in and said, look, here's how we're going to move forward. You're going to be respected. You're going to be heard. We're going to agree that at the end, we may not agree on the outcome, but we all agree that this process will drive us to the best outcome. And they kind of said, look, if we can do it for this group in D.C., we think we can really help your system. So after talking to the head of the Volunteer Accommodation Officer section, we felt that this was better to use somebody that has that fire and rescue experience rather than bringing in somebody that doesn't understand the Volunteer Accommodation Officer dynamic. If that makes sense.
The volunteer companies in this county are might different than folks maybe in places like the Friends of Northern Virginia.
Oh, agree, 100%, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Polster.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, if I could, we kind of got away from the original motion. I just want to make sure my motion was clear because I lost my voice there for a second. So the motion is to authorize staff to file a grant application with the PATH Foundation seeking $25,000 to support the services of the clearing to help improve fire and rescue stakeholder group dynamics and develop a 120-day plan. In addition, to fund the balance of the clearing fee with the use of fire service fund contingency. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Carney, I believe you were the second? You're okay with what he just read?
Yes.
That's what he read the first time.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. All right, we have a motion and a second. I'm going to call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Opposed. And I think I've stated my reasons. I'm kind of getting frustrated with how things just show up on the agenda and we're immediately supposed to vote for them.
I would tell you, if the board would like to amend the Chapter 30 to state that no matter can come to the board for action unless it's been to the board before or something like that.
But that's ridiculous.
That's the same problem we ran into last month.
Now you're coming out and saying something that's kind of,
Well, I don't know. What do you want me to do?
You can't legislate all
as an
respective
elected
behavior.
member of the county board of supervisors, I would like to have at least enough respect to give me time to look at something and to speak to some of my constituents before we have to vote on something.
You can't legislate every aspect of respectful behavior, and I don't know how to say that any more plainly.
Well, let staff know if you would like me to do anything different.
I just told you.
I don't set the agenda.
Mr. Fraser, were you, I believe you made the December 14th Public Safety Committee meeting, weren't you there?
I was there, but wasn't on the agenda. A discussion of going and doing something like this and recommending this is different than having this before us today, having never seen it before the agenda came out.
I was just trying to figure out how you never saw it if we voted to do this at the Public Safety Committee, but
We didn't have this. He just said that we
Mr.
didn't have
Polster
this.
just said this came in a day or two
the
ago.
final proposal, yeah.
Yes, which is very different.
So we did
ballpark.
exactly what I said we were gonna do, that something shows up on the agenda, no prior advance, and we vote for it. This actually is an addendum item. The discussion of something like this was not an addendum item, but this product was. Because it didn't show up on the agenda on Friday. Am I mistaken?
The attachment, all the narrative and the action, recommended action, everything was in the agenda.
The narrative, but not the product.
That's not how.
The narrative is you're asking for permission to do something that you've already done. There we go again. We're asking for basically forgiveness instead of authorization.
But you and I also personally discussed the two-step process.
Starting today.
No, we discussed it.
We didn't discuss this
week
the
ago.
other day when I was talking about bringing people together. You've already basically violated trust issues by being this far out in front of the board, as far as I'm concerned.
All right, thank you. If there's a better way that we need to make this work on the agenda, I'll be happy to sit down with you.
I have been vocal for months, Ms. Chair.
Okay.
Vocal for months, and it keeps happening.
It's just, I guess, the lack of understanding what you're asking for, Mr. Fraser.
Deference. If you know something and he knows something, then the rest of us should know it at the very same moment.
There's no way that I can think of any business, and the county, as far as I'm concerned, is a business, would tell the CEO everything that was happening before it happened and get anything done.
Well,
And we're still talking about a 2015 study that pretty much very little has been done.
Well, I would just say that 2015 study shows a lot of the problems that I fear we're recreating here, which is that we're starting a process without buy-in, and we're relying on outsiders to dictate to us a solution. Instead of having a bottom-up solution, we're investing in a top-down solution. And that's not going to be successful. The 2015 study, the first wild suggestion was you need more people in the county so you can have more volunteers. Thanks for nothing. How much did that cost us?
Did you read that study?
Well, I
It's
know
still
that
pretty accurate.
that's the one, and the next one is the tanker brigade assignments, which I don't think have ever really been done either. But, I do know that, sometimes it's not just what do you pay to get a product, what do you invest to get a product? And from my experience with this 2015 JLN study, the pay scale study, it's a nice idea to think that you can pay for expertise. But unless it is tailored to the problem and really does get people to the table, you are inventing more problems. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you. I'm going to move on to the Sperryville Volunteer Rescue Squad Pilot Staffing Program.
This matter was before the board at your last meeting. You referred it to the the Public Safety Committee, who reviewed staff information as well as a proposal that was provided by Sperryville Volunteer Rescue Squad at just before your last meeting. The Public Safety Committee, let me back up. You're currently in a pilot program for 3 months that ends at the end of January. The question that came up at the last meeting that I asked the board to consider was what comes after that. Is the system able to handle the end of the pilot program should the pilot program morph into something else? You referred that to the Public Safety Committee. Public Safety Committee considered that at their meetings on the 14th and the 28th and recommended to the board that the pilot program at Sperryville should be extended for 3 months from the end of the current pilot with consideration of a cost share and number of days per week be left to the Board of Supervisors. The current pilot program includes Sperryville Rescue paying 100% of the cost of the staff, Rappahannock County Fire and Rescue Department staff assigned to that station for 2 days a week. The Sperryville Rescue has requested the board's consideration for 3 members, 3 days per week, and a cost share of 80% county, 20% Sperryville Volunteer Rescue Squad. So the recommendation from this Public Safety Committee is that the pilot should be extended for 3 months at least to allow the other processes to keep moving forward to figure out what comes next. But they didn't think it was their position to tell the board how to cost share and which number of days, because that's all linked in with the cost share.
So, Mr. Curry, what's the end of the pilot program?
The end of January.
Sorry?
End of January.
And, okay.
So a 3 month extension would get us to the end of April.
Correct. Unfortunately, I can't put up on the screen. I asked Mr. Polster just to put together a quick funding idea. 2 days per week is approximately $17,000, and then that could be cost shared any way the board thought was appropriate. 3 days per week is just about $26,000 for the 3-month period, and that could be cost shared. Now, this would be subject to offer and acceptance, and I don't know whether Sperryville Volunteer Rescue Squad is positioned to extend beyond January with any combination of cost share. As you're aware, they're using EMS cost recovery and other donation money right now to pay for these, and those dollars are typically assigned to capital replacement, so they don't want to deplete their capital funds too far, and that's in their document, which is also attached to board docs.
Well, I think when our volunteers come forward to us and say, hey, we really need this, we need to do it, especially as we heard last month in an area that's so challenged for coverage as Sperryville. That extends all the way down to Madison County. It's a challenging time to have a response and to not have the folks that are needed there to respond is not acceptable. So if Sperryville's come to us and said we need this, I think we need to respond as we did to Chester Gap and figure out how to make it work. President Woodard, did you have anything to say?
Yes, please.
Please.
If it's okay, Madam Chairman.
Oh, sure.
The things I have to say are, one, I think that there's always a concern when taxpayer money is being put into something like this. And you might want to ask the taxpayers, but taxpayers might want to know, well, what do I get out of this? And I think the answer is that if you don't do this, do you want to be in a I would pose them a question another way. Would you want to have less EMS response? Secondly, I'd like to say that if you look at how the Sperryville Volunteer Rescue Squad, and this is repeated by all the other companies in the county, leverages taxpayer dollar. If you had to pay for an EMT and a medic for 8,600 and whatever hours there are in a year, including the benefits, you're talking about an investment in Sperryville of about $620,000. So the volunteers are basically offsetting that expense to taxpayers. So what we would like to do is to get this medic and be able to leverage our volunteer organization so that we don't have to go to the point where it's going to cost $700,000 or $625,000. Additionally, we raised this past year over $100,000 of community funds, and that would be another $100,000 that would go away if we had to have all paid staff. So what we're doing is leveraging the investment you guys are making by a considerable amount. So that's why I think that it makes a lot of sense.
And it's my understanding you've got quite a bit of capital expense in your not-so-distant future with ambulance and stretchers and life pack.
There is. An ambulance is expensive. There's continuing upgrades in technology. All the emergency equipment is amazingly expensive.
It is.
And so if you have a stretcher go down, it's it's thousands of dollars to replace that. So that's the sort of thing. And we want to be able to keep our capital budget intact so that it doesn't do any good to have career staff if you don't have a decent ambulance to use to respond with. So there's a balance there. And we want to be able to keep as much of our capital budget intact so that we're able to continue to provide the kind of service that we're used to doing.
Madam Chair, I wonder if I could just ask President Weir a question.
Yes, sir.
Well, first of all, I want to just say thank you to your company and you and the other leaders in your company for taking the initiative with regard to this pilot program, because I think it's a great example of people taking the initiative to prove that something works, and clearly it is. And second, the written plan that you provided, I thought was outstanding, and I would encourage every citizen to read it because I think it frames beautifully the challenge we're facing with our overburdened volunteer system in its current form. I guess my only question on preserving your cash in the bank for upcoming capital expenditures, I just wonder if the 80-20 cost share that's in the plan, if that's a hard number, and if we might be able to settle on something like 75-25. And then I also wonder, it seems like, we try to move as quickly as possible in terms of decision making, but obviously a county-wide strategic plan for how we're going to blend paid into our volunteer force is going to take time. And I wonder if a 3-month time period is too short, and if we wouldn't all benefit by allowing you all to continue what you started your pilot by going to 6 months. So my question to you, Martin, number one, on the cost share and whether or not 20% is a hard number. And then second, if a longer period of time would be acceptable to you all, 6 months instead of 3.
Well, thank you for the compliment on the plan. That's something that I just happen to be good at. So
it was really well done.
The original plan presumed a year commitment from the county. And the Public Safety Committee looked at that, and this is their recommendation. So longer is better. I think what we would like to do is to have this sort of arrangement set up, ideally, that it would be in place until that more formal long-term plan countywide has been developed and enacted. Until that happens, I think we're going to be in a similar situation. In terms of the 25, 75, 20, 80, you know, if you look at the dollar amount, it's minuscule. You know, you're talking about, I can't do it in my head, but, you know, it's maybe $1,000 over the course of 90 days, which, you know, I don't want to scoff at $1,000, but, you know, if we're negotiating, you know, I'll split the difference with you.
Well, I know that Sperryville Rescue will staff accordingly, and if you don't need the folks, you won't staff.
Right.
Right, so it's filling staffing gaps. It's not that you're going to max out that amount. You're only going to use as much as you need.
And
Okay.
Well, and I think part of the big issue is that they're leaning on, you know, very
Certain
few
individuals.
people who are
Sure.
burning out, and those individuals want predictable downtime.
Right.
And that's what predictable 2 or 3 days a week provides those other individuals predictable downtime. They can have a cocktail if they want. Today, they can't do it.
Right.
And allows us to-
Or go out of town.
Go out of
What a
town.
concept.
It allows us to schedule for the days that you do need people.
that's right.
So having more of a definitive, I think, helps people have the day off, and whoever's scheduling those people, you know, it's getting more complicated because everybody's scheduling paramedics and basic. And so I think it would help you if we knew definitively so many days a week. I too think an extension, I was leaning towards the end of June to get us to right before budget season and give you more time to give us time to do the strategic plan and have a better view. But the end of June may not be long enough, I don't know.
So the board can consider funding as you go through the budget process.
Correct.
I'm sure you will. And as was noted, the hope is that the broader strategic planning effort involving and among all of the stakeholders in the EMS side of things, not to mention fire, would help understand whether this is the right station to do a certain program and how it should be scattered across the county and how to best invest citizen tax dollars to integrate into the combination system. Until we're there, which based on the last agenda item might be difficult, I think you can take tranches of time as we move forward and keep considering extending the pilot as necessary. But as we get into the budget time, staff is going to have to understand the bigger picture.
Yeah.
And so 90 days would allow us to do that. Through June would somewhat allow us to do that, but there are going to have to be significant questions and forward projections during that budget process.
Sure.
You have about $40,000 in your Board of Supervisors contingency, which wouldn't require a supplemental appropriation or anything. There's some funding left in the fire service contingency, which could be made available for these services.
There's ARPA funding.
Well, there's always ARPA funding, which through one lens or another we could get access to, make sure it's an appropriate expenditure, but might be ARPA funds that have been attributed to something else that have then freed up funding for this. We just want to make sure we dot those I's and cross those T's.
The problem I have, that I keep going back to, is we've got an all part-time paid staff. They actually have obligations in other jurisdictions. Am I correct?
I think not all of them have obligations in other jurisdictions, but many of them do.
There's just such a shortage of help available.
That's a model
For
that
this.
we chose to move forward. I thought it was a sweet spot that we could put in place to get highly qualified, people who are willing to do a few extra shifts on the side, taking that next leap to full-time employment. I know we would attract some qualified applicants, but the cost goes up significantly. There is risk to the part-time, and that's why we have 13 employees right now filling out a full-time, 24/7, which would take 5 or 6, but we have 13.
So that allows you to also not
We
offer a
flex in.
benefits package.
That's right,
correct?
and people flex in and out based on their availability.
And they're all highly qualified individuals.
Oh, yeah.
Highly qualified,
So-
critical care medics who may not be needed to complete a crew at Sperryville, but to be on the chase vehicle and be potentially with a patient by themselves for 15 minutes or something, it's very important that they have been there, done that.
I apologize, Gary. My iPad has picked exactly the wrong moment to fizzle out on its connection. But I do agree that 3 months is too short a time. It doesn't get us through budget season to where we could solidify these numbers going forward. I would think a 6-month solution is more what we're looking for, and we can revisit it if necessary at that time. I think the number you quoted for staffing was 26 to meet the full need.
5 months to June 30th to sync with the fiscal year, and 3 days a week for 3 months is 26,000 at 80%, or at 100%.
Okay.
So you want to,
You're making me do math. So it's 18,000. No, that's not right.
Just, it's for how many months, authorizing up to 2 or 3 days per week
I just want to make sure you have enough money
with a, yeah,
and
that's a good
whatever
idea.
resource.
With a cost share requiring blank percent to be covered by SVRS.
It's $20,000 a month basically for the county.
No.
At
There's 20,000 for 90 days.
Yeah, so for,
for 90 days.
3 days
Okay.
a week, it's $8,700 a month,
Okay.
100% county.
Or 21. So it's $7,000 a month basically. So we'd say not to exceed $35,000, $36,000.
Is that a 20%, 25?
So $34,500 for 5 months at 80/20.
We were 75-25.
I don't know where you guys are. I'm just trying to do math.
So what's the number you
total
came up
was
with,
what?
Gary?
34.5.
80/20 is 34,560 at 3 days a week.
Okay. So 35, not
Yes.
to exceed 35,000. I guess that's my motion.
Do you hear a motion?
I'll second her motion.
Well, the recommended action is program for how long, how many months, authorizing up to 2 or 3 days per week.
I don't think that's a decision we need to make. I think the company can make that decision.
Well, I think we just said,
So 5
2 or
months
3.
at $35K all in for the county.
Yes. So it's tidy. They're managing the days. They're managing the percentages. That's what we anticipate 80% being. That's the max we'll pay. And we'll revisit it after that time if there's not an additional plan in place by then.
in discussion?
From me?
Yes, sir. I was going to let Martin speak if.
Well, I don't want to go for gift horse in the mouth, don't get me wrong, but longer is better.
I understand that we have a budget cycle that we
Yeah.
cycle through by that time. And I think that my intention is that we have a better handle on the material. We memorialize the need in the budget. And so it's not a one-off item like this, and it's just included in the budget cycle.
That makes a lot of sense.
That's why I don't want to go longer, because I don't want it to keep being a stopgap measure.
It's not that, it
I want
has
it-
more to do with the inclination than the actual appropriation at this point.
The inclination toward
Well,
what?
that it's, if we don't have something else in place, that we can continue to,
We'll be back at this table.
yeah,
Yes, that's correct.
yeah, okay.
But, I mean, we could address just the needs of the individual company within the budget as well. It isn't that we have to have a full plan in place to budget for it. We can budget for this in our annual budget.
Got it.
And it gives us an opportunity to thank you again.
Yes.
Mr. Whitson, did you have something?
Yeah, some of you just quickly walk me through the number that we quoted.
Okay, so I took the 3 days per week value that's on your screen, 25,920 divided by 3, multiplied by 5 to get a
Whose screen?
5-month. My screen, and Mr. Whitson's and the people on the Zoom sphere screen. So that is a full 100% for 5 months, multiplied by 0.8 gets you to 34 and change, which rounds to 35 for 5 months, and the days work out however they work out over that time period. I would only ask that you consider amending your motion to authorize use of some combination of fire service fund contingency and board of supervisors contingency, one or both. If it's either, and let staff figure that out, or if you want to just select board.
How much is in the fire services contingency?
Not enough for all of it. That's why we can max out one and then use the board or use fund balance. We can't use fund balance without doing an appropriation, so that's why I suggest using contingency, which you can do quickly, and then you
And
can come
it's all
back next
there.
month and
Yeah, let's do
what
it
you
all
gotta
for
do.
contingency. That's what it's there for.
Amending your motion to use
Yes.
contingency?
Yes.
Did we have a second? I don't know.
I did.
Okay.
Yep.
And you're okay with that?
Yep.
All right. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Go ahead, Mr.
Yeah,
Yep.
Gary, all right, you took the 3 days a week at 25,920, and just slow down for a second.
Yeah, 25,920, that's 3 months value. Divided that by 3 to get a monthly value.
I see, I got you, okay.
Then multiply that by 5 to get a 5-month
Got it.
value of 43,200.
I got it, it's,
Yeah.
yeah, the labels in the chart,
Yeah,
weren't totally clear to me, so I got it now, thank you.
All right. If there's no other discussion, all those in favor say aye.
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 Uh,
And no opposed. All right.
Thank you,
Thank
Martin.
you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Martin.
Thanks.
Pole-mounted speed display signs.
I'll let you know that Mr. Yao whispered in my ear that it appears to be a equipment problem that they'll have to get on.
Happy New Year.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's always great when it works, and then it doesn't.
This building's not connected to the other buildings by wire. We use magic and wireless connections, and there's something wrong with that.
That puff of smoke.
All right. Do we have anything on the,
No, unfortunately, I had a meeting set up with Mr. Fromer from VDOT for late in December, but then I'll blame my wife. Her plane out of Denver got delayed, and I had to go pick her up at the airport and cancel. Then he was on vacation for the balance of the year. He and I will get together at the beginning of January, and hopefully I can convince him that most of the signs that the board would like are appropriate and be able to convey that back to the board.
Sounds good.
sign ordinance amendment?
Well, this is just a carryover from last month, and I would just say if you have any concerns about the ordinance, please memorialize them in an email to me before the next planning commission meeting.
Mr. Goff and I have not had our opportunity to fine tooth comb this yet, so holiday's been tough, particularly Mr. Goff. And we'll find a time to do that early in this month so we can get feedback to the planning commission.
I did get in touch with Teresa for Businesses of Rappahannock. Do you want me just to forward information?
That's
questions?
usually the best way. I mean, I think memorializing your concerns in an email gives us an opportunity to address them in the context of a meeting instead of a conversational, hey, this is not what I want it to be. And so if you do get written feedback, please send it along, and we'll be glad to review it. We also had Mr. Makala, who's the chair of the BZA, join us at our most recent meeting and address some concerns. And we also encouraged him to put his feedback in writing or send it through their representative to the Planning Commission so that we could address that in a timely manner. I did stress, and I think everyone on this board understands, that this is a process like anything else we develop. It's not like it's going to be done tomorrow. You all will give feedback. The Planning Commission will work on it. We'll send it by the Berkeley group, and then we'll have a hearing on it. So we do hope that folks get in early with their feedback so we can get the best review we can from the Berkeley group.
While you invoke that name, I'll note that I do have a kind of proposal for the crosswalk from them. And we'll trying to coordinate with planning commission folks, and we'll get that pulled up and move that along.
Sounds good.
All right. Mr. Whitson, town boundary line change request?
Right, I can keep this short. My understanding of kind of the movement of the ball from one court to the other is that the town of Washington, sent us a letter after we sent to them, certain things we were seeking from the town government as part of the boundary line adjustment. They wrote us a letter, basically said that certain of our requests were likely acceptable, but in further discussions, I understand that they want, if we decide to pursue a boundary line adjustment agreement, they want that agreement to make the boundary line adjustment to be a standalone agreement, and for it not to be burdened with all the various items that we have requested. They consider accepting, and to that end, just to keep this process moving forward, my suggestion is that we take the letter that we sent to them. I believe Ms. Donahue signed it, and just, I don't know, Gary, if you can pull that up.
I think that's, well, I can't pull it up for them, but I can pull it up for you. I believe it was the July 8th letter, which followed the board's July meeting, and during which and accompanying this was
Yeah, I think it
was a proposal.
There was an attachment.
Yeah, which was
Sorry. Oh, it was that's right.
is the boundary line agreement with all of the various
Right.
sections.
So, my understanding is that from speaking with members of the town government that we could move this process along by simply separating our requests that are embedded in that draft agreement that we sent to them, move those into a standalone agreement, and let the town council consider those separate and apart from the actual boundary line adjustment agreement. I know that sounds tortured, but it seems clear from their letter to us and my discussions with them that they don't want the boundary line adjustment agreement itself, as I said, to be burdened or clouded by the various items that we were seeking from them.
Could I ask a point of clarification, Mr. Whitson?
Sure.
Are you suggesting then that we remove those requests that we have of the town for like the restrictions on the property?
Yeah, covenants.
The covenants, the restrictive covenants that we have, and pursue that first before we do the rest of the boundary adjustment?
Yeah, exactly. And that way, my understanding is that the Washington Town Council would just consider what we're seeking, I guess, individually, each of our requests, or as a package of requests, and then they'd make a decision on those for whatever reason. And again, I think it was emphasized in their last letter to us when the ball was kicked back into our court, that they didn't want to consider those requests as part of the agreement. So Mr. Frazier, you're exactly right. You said it better than me.
Mr. Whitson, just for your awareness, the mayor is with us in the room.
Oh, okay.
Well, I was a little perplexed when I read this red letter version. But if that's what they want, then I would make a motion that staff work and get it to them as soon as possible, the request for the removal of the covenant restrictions in the ARB on the adjoining 4-acre parcel that we have.
Mr. Frazier, would you be willing to amend that motion to include the other requests in the, that were in the draft agreement we sent to them. Because that included, limitations on the use of the parcel, kind of vis-a-vis the current county zoning of that parcel as commercial general and some other items.
Move the boundary agreement forward at the same time?
I think what he's saying is, in the agreement, there were several paragraphs in Article 1. One was that the parties agreed to the boundary line adjustment. The second was regarding use and development of the property, and it had some discussion of what can and can't be done there. It has to be consistent with the master plan and consistent with what current county zoning is.
I think that would be part of a boundary adjustment. I thought we were
Then
making the agreement to just strip the request that we had for the restrictions out and send that forward before we do with the rest of it.
Right, and there was sewer to Washington Volunteer Fire and Rescue, limitation on future boundary line adjustments.
Removal covenants.
So,
yeah, Mr. Frazier, I think even the zoning related provision that was in our draft, is my understanding that, that would also be moved out of boundary line adjustment request, although I see your logic, because it's related to that parcel in particular, if I'm understanding you correctly.
I would think that would be part of a
Yeah.
boundary agreement,
Yeah,
because it,
I think you're probably right the more I think about it. So it would be everything but, Mr. Curry, everything but that one provision.
paragraph 1 and 2 under Article 1, I guess.
Yeah.
1 and 2 is the boundary line adjustment, and 2 is the use and development of the property adjusted into the town, which speaks to.
Yeah, I think Mr. Frazier's right, because the only way that could be put into some kind of standalone agreement, divorced from a specific parcel, is if it was a more general statement about, zoning of properties surrounding the town. So I agree with Mr. Frazier. I appreciate you pointing that out. So it'd be everything but that, item 2. I'll second Mr. Frazier's motion if he's willing to amend accordingly.
yeah, I would add those additional comments that we have in our letter.
So all but Article 1, paragraph 1
So
and
for
2.
clarity, anything that's not related to the parcel,
Right.
that's part of the boundary agreement.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I just wanted to state for the record that I have had some family members that have done some work for the members of the town council for the town. This doesn't rise to the level that I need to recuse myself, but I did want to just state that for the record and recognize that as a fact.
Thank you. All right, hearing no further discussion, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Accounts payable transition.
You want to talk to us?
Thank you.
Yes, so in early, in early December, the county treasurer informed county administration that she and her staff would be ending their processing of mid-month and end-of-month accounts payable at the end of calendar year 2022. At this point, we have worked with the treasurer's staff to understand what the current processes are, have informed other departments that effective January 1st, county administration will be handling all the accounts payable processing for both mid-month and end-of-month payments. And the action requested on tonight's agenda is modification of 3 board policies: the credit card policy, the budget transfer, budget lines policy, and the payment of invoices policy, to change references relating to the treasurer's involvement in the accounts payable process to reflect that as the county administration processes.
And just for full clarity, the budget transfer, budget lines policy was developed under when Ms. Kaiser was here, and it's cleaned up a little bit more than just treasurer to county admin.
Well, for purposes of discussion, And since I can't pull up anything to look at, is there, what would you like this motion to look like, Gary?
To move to adopt amended policies 301, 305, and 310 as presented, or amended if you choose to amend them.
Okay, I will make the motion to adopt them as presented.
As presented, in the amended form presented.
Yes, correct.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none?
I just would like to thank staff for taking on the quick cleanup of this language so we
Yes.
continue to
We wanted
operate.
to, we knew we were changing, but we wanted to make sure had your policies straight
Yes.
as well.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Devil's in the
Thank you.
details. Thank you.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
Board Policy 810.
At your last meeting, there was discussion about appointments, and Mr. Frazier asked for the agenda topic to be on this agenda to discuss Policy 810, which is regarding appointments. I did print out a copy and put it before you, not knowing that the
Prescient.
internet would be wonky today, but I thought you might want to mark on it. It would be convenient for you to have it in front of you. So there's a copy for each of you. It's also linked on Board Docs. If somebody watching on Zoom would like to click on the link, you can pull up that policy.
Any discussion? I think Mr. Frazier asked for this to be on the agenda, if I remember.
We discussed it last month because I found myself wishing I had an opportunity to ask certain specific questions of potential appointees and didn't have that ability. So maybe the board would like to send this for cleaning up specific language to the Rules Committee, or if we could just alter it today.
I would say if it goes to the Rules Committee, I think based on some of the recent comments and the tacking on waiving and formalities, we might want to touch a couple other sections while it's open. And I'm not prepared to speak on the fly to those.
Is it your motion then to send it to the Rules Committee, Mr. Frazier?
I think so, because then we could come back with a clean copy for the board to review.
If that's your motion, I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. All right, we doing okay, or does anybody need a break?
Break would be great.
Okay, 5-minute
If we could,
recess. Gotcha. All right, welcome back. Mr. Whitson, can you hear me?
Yep, I hear.
Thank you very much. All right. We are into the board committee reports. Building committee this evening, I would think.
Yeah, we met early in December and did not have a subsequent meeting because we had determined a course of action for tonight.
Thank you. Recreational facilities.
We keep moving forward with positive movements, and I think that we'll go into this year getting a lot done, which feels really, really good. We're getting the fence done. Ms. Smith probably is aware of the robust pickleball discussion that's constantly happening. Always happening, so that's there. So I look forward to, really productive year. Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
I look forward to attending a meeting.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't have to be there because you're.
No, right.
Yeah, okay. Public Safety Committee.
I didn't participate in the last one, I listened, so it might be best if you give us a breakdown.
I think the two major items that we covered are the Sperry bill that we just voted on, and this evening we'll have the Company 4 recommendation from the Public Safety Committee. We did have good attendance. Also, some of us went to Company 4 and met with some of their officers per their request. So there was 3 meetings that some of us were involved in December, And the results of those meetings will be heard this evening. Did I miss anything? Rules Committee,
We didn't meet.
Planning Commission update.
I think I spoke briefly earlier it was mostly a discussion about where we're headed. And I guess that was your discussion with the Berkeley group, Gary, or your point that we're still working on that joint meeting date?
Have a scope of work that I'm trying to get confirmed is what we want, and I've engaged the, I guess was that kind of acting chair. Maybe that'll all change in January, I don't know. So that needs to get moving forward, determine that's what you want to do, or you want to do or not, and bring it to the joint bodies.
Right, so it was more of a discussion, look back, look forward sort of meeting. The main item was the public comment, which was Mr. Makala and only Mr. Makala, talking for about 25 minutes on the sign ordinance.
I know we will all be happy when the sign ordinance is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fire Levy Board.
We did not meet.
Did not meet.
There will be a meeting coming up.
Soon.
All right. Treasurer's reports, we can't see anything on the screen. Anything you want to highlight?
I don't think there's anything out of ordinary. Cash flow and everything is still good shape.
Does the governor's rollback of the grocery tax impact our forecasting at all?
No, there's a lot of debate during the General Assembly session when that was changed. There's 2.5% on the grocery tax. 1% is a local option, which I believe every locality has optioned, and then 1.5% is to the state. So the 1.5% state is gone,
Right.
and the 1% local option remains. So
Good.
it'll be the same for us. I would expect continued dialogue about that 1% as we move into the future.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Building zoning. The building permit report.
Yeah, very small this month. I discussed that with Ms. Lee, and she said she was very surprised as well.
Maybe everybody needed the break. Emergency services, VDOT. Okay. Any questions before we move on to matters presented? Okay. Matters presented by the board. Mr. Frazier?
Not this moment.
Okay. Ms. Smith?
I don't have anything.
Mr. Carney?
Just really quickly, I got the email from Ms. Jewell about the funds that are going to come through, or that I guess, were allocated. Right, and I'm assuming we'll maybe talk about that next meeting? Is it something in terms
Yeah, basically, we got about $23,000. Our share of $1 million prorated across all the counties who applied based on their loss of real estate revenue due to forest land use. It's restricted to public education and outdoor recreation. So the board, at some point in time, the board can allocate where that's going to go. It can be appropriated into this fiscal year. I believe it's meant to be in sustaining fund at the state level, but our share of the total could change as others apply. Not everybody applied. Well, maybe that's everybody who has forest land use. I don't know. I think 87 counties applied.
75?
So
There were 75 eligible and 68 applied.
there you go. Out of 95 total.
Is this something we have to apply for every year, or are we now in is it a
Every year,
recurring? Okay.
yes,
And we'll be allocated the funds when?
Shortly.
shortly, yeah.
Okay.
Within the next couple months.
But the million might not be the same every year.
Correct.
And that's subject
Okay.
to budget, state budget.
The outdoor recreation part caught my eye.
I
For the
bet.
park.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Just looking,
exactly.
not that it would have to, it just, I look forward to discussing.
No, there's a lot of work to do over at that park. That would be
Do
very
you have
handy.
another formula that they use to disperse it, besides X number of counties get so much money?
It's a prorated allocation based upon our prorated share of foregone revenue relative to all of those who applied. And then multiply that fraction by the $1 million, and that's what we got.
So all the counties who employ forest land use give up a certain amount of real estate tax revenue due to that. And so we all entered how much we have foregone into an application, and then we got our share of the total.
And was that $1 million figure just something that the General Assembly just said, hey, $1 million?
I believe so,
Okay,
yes.
got it. So presumably next year, 75 could apply. There could be 10 million, there could be 400,000.
Right.
Right.
And our percentage could be different. So the 23,000 suggests that we have 2.3% of all
Yep.
forest land use write-off
Interesting.
of those of who applied.
Yes, and our write-off is $1.7 million.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just for forest.
For forest. Yeah. And hopefully that's keeping Lars forest tracks
Forests.
intact and as forest.
Right.
Mr. Whitson?
I don't have anything. I look forward to finally sitting with you all next month.
That's good.
Looking forward
I
to
guess
it.
we're gonna have to make room for you. There's paper everywhere.
We've gotten
We're gonna have to
comfortable.
tighten up here.
Yeah, we've gotten comfortable.
Can't
wait to have you back.
I'm a smaller person than I was, so I won't be back.
Looking forward to February. The only thing,
Thanks again, everyone, for
Thank
your
you.
patience.
the only thing I have is, unfortunately, Truist in Flint Hill is going to be closing on March 28th. And I know there's a lot of people that use that branch, a lot of the citizens of Rappahannock County that use it, and the people that work in that branch are very sad that they're leaving. But they are putting it up for lease, so I don't know.
That caught our eye in our office. It has a budget impact that we'll be looking at.
Okay.
Would you know if it's still their intention to not downsize the number of employees to find a place for them, or is that?
The press release suggested that employees would have an opportunity in another branch, but
I talked to the ones that were in there last week, and one is going to have to drive to Front Royal, or both are maybe. So it's not as nice of a situation as it could have been if they'd have stayed in Flint Hill. But they are given the opportunity to go to a different branch. Shorter hours, I think I understand.
Oh, shorter hours and longer drive.
Yep.
That's typical.
Welcome to corporate banking. All right. Closed meeting, sir?
yes. Would you like to do the end?
Sure. I move that the Rappahannock County Board of Supervisors conduct a closed meeting in accordance with 2.2-3711A of the Code of Virginia for the purpose of 1, consultation with legal counsel employed or retained by a public body regarding specific legal matters requiring the provision of legal advice by such counsel. 2.2-3711A8. The subject matter of the closed meeting will be 1, consultation with legal counsel regarding the fire and EMS, rescue EMS services agreement.
Thank you.
So we need a second.
We have,
I'll second.
thank you, Mr. Whitson. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you.
All right, you're in close